So this session we will see the language through which the scriptures have been given to us. So it's important we know before the nature of this language which was capable of giving expression to the subtle profound experiences, the realizations of the rishis. Sri Aurobindo at one point makes a statement that this is perhaps, while speaking about Sanskrit, so he says this is perhaps the only language on the earth in which to some extent, not even fully he says, to some extent the subtle profound experiences can be systematized. Why he says to some extent? Because the original Sanskrit is somewhere lost. The original language, the source language, which is lost. What we have in the Vedas and Upanishads, that language is very, very close to the source language. Of course, not the source language. So this language, even which is very close to the source language, has the flavor, has the force, has the original sense of the source language. But apart from its scientific nature, it's a very highly logical Sanskrit language, the language that we have in the Vedas and in the later literature, what we call as Sanskrit. So, in the beginning, this language was not known as Sanskritam. The name of this language was simply Bhasha. If we turn to Panini, say 800 BC or 6 to 800 BC, Panini doesn't use Sanskritam anywhere in his work. Neither Patanjali uses. So the language, the name which is used by Panini is Bhasha. Okay. So Bhasha was the language which was available in the day-to-day life. And for the Vedic language, for the scriptural language, he used the word Chandas. Okay. Chandas and the Bhasha. These were the two names we find in Panini. Bhasha because it was spoken, given expression to in Vaikhari, the loud sound form. Chandas referred to the highly rhythmic and potent language in which the mantras were given expression to. But this language, when we study the nature of this language, Sanskritam as it is available to us today, in spite of its limitations because the language is again used by the limited consciousness, limited mind, so that limitation is reflected in the language also. In spite of all its limitations and shortcomings and flaws, it still stands as the best language in the world compared to other languages which are available to us. It's not a mere exaggeration, but when we study deeply the nature of other languages and compare it with Sanskrit, or we go deep into the very spirit of this language, it reveals its own personality, like how deep, how profound is this language. In fact, we see that the whole system of yoga, or the realizations of the truth, as it happened to the seers and sages, they got expressed through this language. And it was those seers and sages who lived in a higher state of consciousness. For them it was a discovery. this language itself was a discovery to give expression to their realizations, their experiences, their feelings. And they were the users of this language. The users themselves were people of higher consciousness. So the language itself coming from a higher consciousness and used by the people with higher consciousness. And when this language is used again consciously for the purpose of self-purification or self-progress, it does amazing things and helps in manifold ways in our journey, in our sadhana. So in fact it's not a language. It's not a mere language, but it's a Shakti. It's a force. And the upasana, the worship, adoration of this force is very much necessary in order to getting into the spirit of this language. So a conscious use of this language, it makes us feel, makes us realize that it's a language of yoga. How it helps in connecting ourselves in many ways with our deeper self. So as a language of yoga, what does it do? So these are the points which we will be discussing. It makes us aware of the very purpose of life. It makes us aware of the very purpose of life. It instills in us the sense of freedom. It makes us realize our divine nature. It impacts the different faculties of consciousness, and it helps us to grow from within. These are the functions of this language at a higher level. How does it do? That it makes us aware of the very purpose of our life. It's a language, it generates lots of awareness. Awareness about ourselves and awareness about whatever things we come in contact with. So it's in fact a language of awareness. I'll give you certain examples. And how does it instills the sense of freedom? How does it impact the different faculties of our consciousness? So all these things we will learn by examples. Here, one of the most important features of this language, of Sanskrit, is that there is an eternal relationship between sound and sense. There is an eternal relationship between sound and sense. When we use other languages for our daily communication, we don't find this relationship between sound and sense. The sound, most of the times we see the sense is imposed on the sound. So that the sense is imposed on the sound. Okay, let's call this as hand. But why should you call this hand? Why this should be finger? Or why a certain object or certain ideas will be called by a certain name? There's no answer to it. In fact, one is not allowed to ask this question, why? If you go on asking a professor of English that why should I call this bottle? Why should I call this pen? Why it is pencil? Why it is nose? Why it is eye? What answers will you get? So this is the nature of most of the conventional languages, where conventionally it's explained to us, okay, you call this hand and be satisfied with that. Don't ask for the question. Or maybe sometimes when we go deep and make a connection of these words with Greek and Latin, and we discover some root sounds, and then make a connection, okay, maybe for that reason this is called that. But not in all cases. But here in Sanskrit, the sense and the sound, they emerge together. They emerge together. The sense is not imposed on the sound. And you are free, anyone is free to ask this question, why a certain object is called by a certain word or any idea, a certain name is given to it. Here the whole philosophy of naming is very profound. You can ask this question why for every word. Now because there are so many root sounds which are lost, we may not be able to immediately find out. It needs lots of research in certain cases to find out. But there is an answer lies to find out. So therefore one finds in Sanskrit, it's a very common thing in Sanskrit, that for every object one has hundreds of words. Hundreds of words. Not one word. And if we analyze these words, each word referring to a particular object, we find that these words are not object specific. That means they are not specific to the object. They are referring to the object, but they are not specific to the object. What they describe is the qualities and properties of the object, not the object itself. If the object has got 100 qualities, so you'll find 100 names. So in a sense, and when we know 100 names of some object, we become aware of 100 different personalities or functionalities or the qualities or aspects of that object. This is how the language, a conscious use of this language, it generates awareness about the thing. It gives us a full understanding or a deeper understanding of the object. And we use the object with proper understanding. So this is how it's a language of awareness. For example, like we say water or fire or air. All the 5 elements you take, or any object you take, and come to Sanskrit to find out how many words Sanskrit has used for different objects. Say water, how many different words one finds for water? Now if I want to know the different qualities or the properties of the water, where should I go? I will ask some scientists or science book that to find out what are the different qualities, different properties of the water. But Sanskrit, a conscious user of Sanskrit, will not need any science book. The language itself will teach what are the different properties of the water. We have a dictionary called Amarakosha. And Amarakosha has a list of words used for particular words. It's the thesaurus in Sanskrit. So for water one finds 27 words. And all these 27 words bring out 27 different qualities of the water or properties of the water. Water is called Paniyam because it is drinkable. It is drinkable. It's called jalam. Jal is the root sound. Jal means to become inert, to become inactive, to become jada. So one of the dharma of the water is from its liquid state, it can become solid. From its liquid state, it can become solid. So it is called jalam. Because it's liquid, it flows. Wherever you drop it, it flows. And when it flows nicely, it has its own rhythm. So it's called salilam. Salilam. Salilam means a rhythmic flow. Salilam. Salilam. It's called ambu. Amb. Like you say amba means mother. Amba. Ambu comes from the root sound amb, means to make sound. So the property of the water is that it has its own natural sound. When you go to a fountain, when the river flows, it has its own sound. So one can play jal tarang. The sound emerges from the water. Ambu, ambhas. Apa, another very prominent word in the Vedas. Apa. Coming from the root sound up. Up means to create, to generate. So it is the source of creation. Without water, no creation. So the creative energy, the source of creation, comes from the water. So up. So that's why in Tamil, the father is called Appa. Means one who is the creator. In other languages, the children are called apatyam. Apatya. If Tamil has preserved the generator, creator, other languages or Sanskrit has preserved the creation. Apatyam. So at the root level, so every word can be reduced to its root sound, and the connection can be found in all languages. So it's not just water. You pick up any word for tree. It's called padapa. A tree is called padapa. Padapa means it drinks through the roots. Roots are its pada, and pa means to drink. So you see how it teaches us the whole science behind everything. Padapa. Udakam is water. Unda. Unda means it's like what do you call? Again referring to the liquidity aspect of it. Udakam. So Padapa is called Vriksha. Vriksha. It is called Dhruma. It is called Taru. All the different words referring to any object, pick up and then analyze, go deep. You find out how it teaches the whole science of the things. So, learning science is simultaneous with this language at one level. So, but I say that it creates more and more awareness in us about things by bringing us in contact with the different properties and qualities of the things. This is how it generates the awareness. The second thing I have a point there, that it's a language of freedom. It instills this sense of freedom. And we all know that the language that we use, it has a tremendous impact on our personality. Right? So here, a language is available to us where we are not bound by anything. You may ask, but there are very hardcore grammatical rules We are bound by that. But that's not a bound. It allows you to use the language in its maryada. It doesn't allow you to go beyond the maryada. You don't cross the limit, but within the boundary, you use it. And for everything there has to be a maryada. There has to be this limit. But within the limit, there has to be maximum freedom. Where the freedom, the amount of freedom that this language offers, no language has. I have given you this example again. I will extend the use of many words. That here, one is not just free to use the word that one wants from a given list of words. One is free to create one's own word. One has the freedom to create one's own word if someone has a different relationship with the object. Or if one discovers a different property, or new experience with the object, you can give a name to it and add to the list. And there is no end to the list. Nowhere you will find that this is only 27 words. No, you can make it 100 also. You are free to do that. Or you are free to choose among the words which befits most for the context. Okay. So the first thing that we experience here, that I am not bound by one word, water. In English, if you by chance forget that you don't remember the word water, you don't know how to communicate. So you are gone. You won't get water. Here you have got 27 words and you can create one more word. So the amount of freedom is more in this language. Even while using the language, giving expression to things, it offers varieties of ways. Not one way of expressing the thought. Varieties of ways. When we learn it, we know it. It can explain, it can give expression to the most precise manner and more elaborate manner. One can express oneself through poetry, through prose, or through different words or different sentences. Here, the plenty of options are available. In other languages, we feel restricted, constrained. But that constraint is not there in this language. Okay. The second, it makes us realize our divine nature. Here, I'll offer one or two points. And we're looking at the practical side of this language. See the number of words that this language has for divine. No other culture, no civilization, no other language has. The number of words for divine. There is no concept of Sahasranama in any culture, any language. Here you have Vishnu Sahasranama, Gopal Sahasranama, Krishna Sahasranama, Rama Sahasranama, Shiva Sahasranama, Lakshmi Sahasranama, Durga Sahasranama, Kali Sahasranama, Saraswati Sahasranama. Name any deity, you have Sahasranama. Sahasranama means the 1,000 names, and 1,000 names means 1,000 different qualities. 1,000 different qualities of the God. And when we use this language, which is divine by nature, and a conscious use of that, it starts impacting our own consciousness, leaves that impression in us, changing our consciousness and impacting in a divine way. That's one point. The another thing is that it's called Deva Bhasha. Most of the times we translate it for convenience as a language of gods. But a better translation will be divine language. Deva Bhasha, because it helps us manifesting the divine qualities in us, making us aware of our divine nature all the times. Here, we need to know about the mantric aspect of this language. I had mentioned in the morning that any language can be made mantric language, raised from its inertia and raised to the level of a mantra, like Sri Aurobindo has done in the case of English or other languages which were used by the seers or spiritual masters. But Sanskrit, right from the beginning, right, we don't know when is the beginning. So our tradition and the experiences of many, they confirm that it's there right from the beginning of the creation. So one should not make any attempt to find out the historicity of this language when it was spoken. It was there, right, and perfected. Time to time it gets perfected, and then again it gets distorted, again it gets perfected. So this whole cycle goes on. So that's why Sri Aurobindo said that maybe in one of the Satya Yugas, this language was perfected to the maximum. What we have today as Sanskritam. And then again it suffers changes, deterioration, and it becomes many languages. It becomes many languages. And through those languages it lives its life. So that is why in India we have so many languages, and sometimes we claim that Sanskrit has to be brought back and made compulsory in our schools and colleges, which is good. But at the same time, the regional languages also should be given the same importance, because Sanskrit lives and has been living through these regional languages for ages. So if a simultaneous importance is given to Sanskrit and the regional languages, then the quality of education will change in this country. What we were talking about, the original thought power, how to boost it, how to revive it, how to educate that faculty. Through our education system, these languages can play a major role. So, makes us realize of our divine nature, impacts the different faculties of our consciousness. This, if I say from my own experiences and the experiments that I have done, this language, because of its mantric value, because of the purity of vibration of sounds, it has a tremendous impact on the physical. We'll discuss about it, what kind of things it does to the physical and in what way. So, in that sense, it's a healing language. If someone is using it regularly and consciously, maintains his well-being physically, because it has a tremendous impact on the physical consciousness. Starts healing at the physical level. At the emotional level, the thought contents. Because you remember, like I told you, that the seers and sages always allowed the pure thoughts, the pure emotions. They're very, very conscious of that aspect. And when we come in contact with these pure thoughts, pure emotions, pure feelings, it starts refining our own emotions. So it impacts at the emotional level. At the mental level, it gives us tremendous clarity. and preparing the mind to move from its physical to the pure, intuitive, higher supermind level, step by step. But at the pure mental level, it gives lots of clarity, because it's the language of clarity. It speaks clearly what it wants. And tremendous clarity it brings to the understanding and helps us to think clearly, think logically. So the logical side also we will discuss. I'll give you certain examples like how it adds clarity. For example, like we have many root sounds. In fact, all the words can be reduced to their root sounds. And in Sanskrit, like every language has certain root sounds, especially the primitive languages. But in Sanskrit, the root sounds are systematized to a great extent, and Sanskrit has preserved maximum number of root sounds, which no other language has. Though Panini has given around approximately 2000 root sounds, a list he has given at the end of his Ashtadhyaya, but those 2000 are not everything of Sanskrit. There are many more root sounds which are lost. So as per my calculation, if we follow the principles of the formation of root sounds, how the root sounds are formed, so there are above 33,000 root sounds which existed in the source language, which are lost. And these can be seen, all these 33,000 root sounds are not lost completely. They are there in all the different languages that the whole world uses today. If Sanskrit has lost, some other language has preserved. Greek, Latin, Lithuanian, Chinese, Tamil, all the vernacular languages, all the 7,000-8,000 languages that we have today in the world. So these root sounds are living in those languages. So a thorough study needs to be done to find out those root sounds. And when we explain the words or try to understand the words by going deep to the root sound and the root experiences behind, the fundamental experiences behind the root sounds, then we can understand their use in the scriptures in the right sense. Okay. So then the scriptures will offer a different meaning to us, not the usual translation or commentaries that we find. Sometimes those commentaries are very helpful, but most of the times they don't bring out the spirit of the sense. There is something behind, something beyond, which needs to be explored and realized. So this is where I can give some examples. Now take the word tapas. Now for understanding any scripture or approaching any scripture or reading, taking a decision or taking a sankalpa to read any scripture, one has to have the adhikara. One has to have the adhikara. Adhikara means the necessary preparation. It makes us eligible to read the scripture. And anyone can become adhikari. Nowhere in the tradition you will find that this community is the adhikari, has the adhikara, or that community doesn't have the adhikara. This is not there in our scriptures. So it says anyone can become adhikari. One needs to develop those qualities. One needs to have those preparations to become adhikari. And two fundamental things needed to approach any shastra, any scripture, are two things: Shraddha and tapas. Shraddha and tapas. These are the two necessary things one has to have, preliminary things. or the fundamental things to enter into any scripture. What is tapas? Now by tapas we usually mean austerity or doing some meditation, like doing tapasya, sitting in the sun in the summer, lighting fire around, or in the winter go in the water inside the pond. There are various ways of practicing these things. This is what we ordinarily understand by tapasya. He is the tapasvi, he does tapasya. It does ghora tapasya. Ravana did ghora tapasya. And this is the image which has been given to us, what is meant by tapasya. But the root sense of tapas, as it is used in the scriptures, is not this, is none of these. These are very deformed meanings of tapasya, or translation of tapasya into practical terms. Very deformed. Tapasya word, or the base word tapas, comes from the root sound tap. Tap. Now from tap you get the words tapa, santapa. Tapa means heat. Tapati means generating heat, tormenting, torturing. You can have, like all kinds of experiences as part of the meaning. The most opposite thing also one can have as a part of the meaning. So basically tap means the heat. Okay. And that heat it exists in everything and being in the form of fire. Okay. The fire element. And in the human beings, in the form of the concentrated energy of the consciousness. So this is how one can translate the word tapas. So tapas is the concentrated energy of the consciousness. The consciousness gets concentrated to achieve something. The fire of aspiration is lit intensely. And to constantly feel this warmth, this heat, the pressure of the fire or the flame, is to remain in tapas. So tapas is that concentrated energy of the consciousness that can achieve anything. By the power of that, one can achieve anything. And it is not necessary that one has to be in a certain position or follow certain things to practice tapas. To study with intense devotion, intense care, intense dedication and concentration is tapas. When a scientist is very much engrossed in achieving what he wants to achieve in his work, is in tapas, because the fire is strong in him. Swami Vivekananda was wandering like a fiery monk. He was all the times in tapas. He was all the times in tapas. So much of concentration in his consciousness. So much of concentrated energy that he speaks and it materializes. What he says becomes true. And they can create this impact not at one place. The whole world, feels that pressure. By their name, by hearing their name, one feels that tapas in oneself. That is the power of tapas. So in order to understand the scriptures, one need to have this preparation. One has to lit that fire within oneself, the fire of aspiration, that yes, I want to go deep into the understanding, into the realization of the scripture. And then Shraddha. Shraddha is usually translated as faith, trust. reverence, concentration. There are 20 different meanings of Shraddha if you go and find out in the dictionary. But the root sense of Shraddha is Shrat and Dha are the two components in the word Shraddha. When Nachiketa, you must have heard the name Nachiketa, is a character, a boy, small boy. So he approaches Yama and asks him the higher knowledge. What happens after death? What happens to the soul after death? Well, Yama was hesitant giving him this higher knowledge. And who is eligible to get the higher knowledge? Why I say that Shraddha is one of the foundational preparation for getting into the higher knowledge. Remember in the Gita it says Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. He who has Shraddha can gain the higher knowledge. So, how to become Shraddhavan? Who is a Shraddhavan? The Shraddha is there in everyone. That's why the Gita says Shraddha mayoyam purusha. This Purusha, the man is filled in with Shraddha. But then again it says Yo yat Shraddha sa eva sa. Depending upon the intensity in the Shraddha, one becomes that much. Yo yat Shraddha sa eva sa. And then it says Shraddhavan labhate jnanam. And the Shraddha, the two components, the root sounds. Dha means to hold on to. To hold on to what is Shrat. Shrat means whatever is true to our aspiration. For example, like if I have the aspiration of realizing the divine, or I have this aspiration of doing good to the world, I have this aspiration of realizing certain aspect of the truth, then whether I have Shraddha or not, how much I will achieve that depends upon my Shraddha, intensity of my Shraddha, how much I hold on to the truth of everything in me, how much I am true to myself. Because I am not just one, there are many things inside me. I have my emotions, I have my mind, I have my body. Mind has different layers. My emotional being also at different levels. Okay. So when we say Shraddha, when every movement, anything that happens within me, everything is in harmony with, or they come forward to collaborate with the central aspiration. Every aspect, every part of my being is clinging to that truth. Then I am Shraddhavan. If one mind says yes, another mind says no. Because this conflict keeps happening within every one of us. Morning I decide something and then afternoon I change my mind. Isn't it? Or next moment I change my mind because so many things happen. Then I bring out so many other logics, examples set before me. Then I am not Shraddhavan. As long as that keeps happening, so many things keep happening. So every movement in my being entirely clings to the truth and truth alone. Then I am Shraddhavan. If we follow this root sense, the best translation for Shraddha would be utmost sincerity. Utmost sincerity in every part of the being or in the entirety of the being is Shraddha. Now you see, look at the language element here. This very language helps me to arrive at these deeper meanings. And when I'm using the word Shraddha, when used consciously, it constantly makes me aware of whether I'm a Shraddhavan or not. It helps me in becoming Shraddhavan. That's the role of this language. That's the power of this language. That's the clarity it brings to the understanding of different words. And these are the words which one finds constantly used in the scriptures. Shraddha. So we'll be discussing again in our sessions many key words in the Vedas, Upanishads, Gita, in order to getting into the spirit, the deeper meanings of these things. So at a mental level, we see like how much clarity it brings to our understanding. So then we can have infallible knowledge. The knowledge, the sure knowledge. The sure knowledge. Where we don't deviate, we don't have doubt, confusion for the questions. So in this way, Sanskrit is the language which helps us growing from within. Yeah, this maybe like we can contemplate a little bit. Another major aspect of this language or the feature of this language is its musicality. It's entirely music, melodious, rhythmic. The chandas is the element of chandas, the harmony, the harmoniously rhythmic movement is extremely intense in this language. That one speaks this language and one really sings. It's all about poetry. In Sanskrit, 99% literature you will find in poetry form. The dictionaries are written in poetry, mathematics is in poetry, chemistry is in poetry, physics is in poetry, dictionaries are in poetry, all in poetry form. We so much natural, poetry is so natural to the soul of Sanskrit that it was, not now, but when Sanskrit was very much live. So, to write in prose was difficult. If someone's scholarship was to be tested, he was given this task of writing something in prose. If someone was able to write a prose passage in Sanskrit, was considered to be the greatest poet. Gadyam kavinam nikasham vadanti. He says Gadya, the prose writing, was the touchstone for the Kavi, for the scholarship. Because writing poetry is very easy. But now it's changed. Now we can't write poetry. If someone is writing poetry, we say, wow, you are a poet, yaar. Great. But the thing was completely reversed in the past. Writing prose was difficult. Poetry, because they lived in poetry. Nature is all poetry. Nature is all poetry. Look at the leaves, look at the trees, look at the flowers, look at the butterflies, look at everything in the nature, it's all poetry. So it inspires to become a poet. And they lived in the nature. They followed the laws and processes of the nature in every aspect of their life. And in the growth and development of this language, so much of nature that you find in this language. The harmony, the architecture, the structure, the logic, what you find in the nature, you find it in the language also. It's a vast topic. You can take one point and then have 7-8 days deliberations on this aspect. Chandas is one of the topics. One can go on digging deep into the chandas. And this language has the power to make you a poet. It forces you to become a poet. It forces anyone who uses it consciously, it forces you to become a poet. It's easy to write poetry in this language. It brings out that poetic energy, that creative energy from within. So that's why the chandas is basically to do with harmony and rhythm. Wherever there is harmony and rhythm, the beauty lies there. And beauty is nothing but the manifestation of the divine in the physical. That's why anywhere we find beauty, anywhere we find proportion, symmetry, harmony, coordination, so it makes us happy. When we look at a flower, it makes us happy because it's so beautifully structured. The vibrance of the colors, the architecture, the design, the softness, the proportion, because there is a chandas in it. It makes us happy. And what is devoid of chandas doesn't make us happy. So that is why the root sound of chand means to gladden, to make happy. Anything which makes us happy is chandas. So the Vedic language itself was called chandas because high element of rhythm. Huh? Chandra is different. Chandra is different. Huh? Chanda, yes, you can. Anyway, so this vibrational quality of Sanskrit has a direct impact on the functioning of the brain and can help in enhancing memory and ability to concentrate. Moreover, it helps in the growth of consciousness, has immense power in bringing greater transformation. Now, when we are using this language, because of this rhythm, the chandas, it's a great aid to the memory. If someone's memory power is less, a child, say for example, is unable to memorize things. So ask the child to sing in Sanskrit some shlokas, some mantras regularly, and within few months he will get his memory, or his memory will be strengthened. These are experimented facts. Anyone can try it and then get the result. The same way it brings concentration, brings the focus, strengthens the mind within. I'll come to the logical aspect of it and a little bit of the yoga pranayama aspect of the language. It's a great, the language has a great power of healing. And there also this element of chandas. For example, when we do the pranayama for healing purpose, we manipulate the breath in a particular manner. Right? This is what is pranayama, manipulation of the breath. And the sound, when we're using the language, that also is a kind of pranayama, because sound is the translation of the air element. It manipulates the breath in a particular manner. And when we are singing the poetry or reading a passage in Sanskrit, or the reading Sanskrit poetry, which are cast into different metrical patterns, we sing it in a particular way because it's a pattern which is created. And we follow that pattern and it manipulates the breath in a particular way. So that makes a kind of pranayama in us. Okay. Suppose there is a chandas which has got, say, 22 syllables in each line. 22, 22, 22, 22. And there is a pause pattern that you have to take a pause, say, on the 14th syllable, then on the last syllable in that line. Now imagine from syllable number 1 to 14, you are doing it in one breath, and then another portion in another breath. Or you divide it into, say, a 21 syllable meter, 7, 7, 7. So the breath is manipulated in a particular way, doing a kind of pranayama. And in addition to this manipulation of the breath, one has the impact of the vibration, the purity of vibration of the sounds. So this is an additional impact. So the chandas, the chanting of the chandas, is more powerful than pranayama. Though in the research, they say that there is nothing like more powerful or less powerful. But one can experience it in a practical way, that one is benefited in a better way while doing the chandas, practicing the chandas, than practicing pranayama. It is the thing is that one gets rid of many blockages, many problems, and also better than pranayama in the sense, the question is, like in pranayama, it is just the manipulation of the breath, only that impact. But here, in addition to that, you have the sound vibration. It impacts. It impacts various parts, and it also, like as Sri Aurobindo says, it generates new cells in us. It generates new cells which are helpful in our growth, inner growth. So that is why it is, when I use the word better than pranayama. I like the example that I gave in the morning, Visarga. Reciting the Visarga. It does the Bahya Kumbhaka in a very natural way. There are certain combinations, for example, like the Urasya sounds. The Urasya sounds are the combination of the sound Ha with Na, Na, Ma, Ya, Ra, La, Va. There are 7 Urasya sounds. And when one does these Urasya sounds, one has the natural Kapala Bhati happening. And my experiment with these 7 Urasya sounds, that whatever benefits one gets by Kapala Bhati, one gets 10 times more benefits by doing these Urasya sounds. Yeah, I'm giving all the sounds. The Urasya sound is like when you combine Ha with Na, it becomes Na. Half Ha and Na. So you pull out the air to pronounce it Na, 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 Ma. Like you say Brahman, Brahman. That Ma. And you can feel what happens. If anyone has any congestion in the lungs, it has immediate impact in clearing off.
Some of the Bollywood songs also will help us in clearing congestion.
Can be.
Very close to Urasa songs, because
Not the pure sound. Can be.
No, I'm serious. And I would like to add one thing more thing for reflection here when you think, what is adding, why you sing more than, and I agree with you, why you sing more than pranayama, sound vibration. You are also saying the certain rasa sounds more than Kapalbhati. I would like to add is the happiness of rhythm or of poetry associated, which you're saying is the basic.
Yeah.
Which in pranayama, when I'm doing pranayama, is pure pranayama.
It is artificial also.
I'm not getting into the happiness of poetry or song.
The rhythm of that. Yes.
So whenever there is an happiness, so there are two hormones which gets released. There is serotonin and oxytocin. So moment there is serotonin and oxytocin, it is giving rise to positivity, which is one of your points in Sanskrit, one of the slides. So I'm just reconnecting and
Okay.
and seeing that happiness can be added to this because of the rhythm and thing. And it is with the scientific experience.
Okay.
Now,
Which doesn't happen in pranayama.
doesn't happen.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you. So we say Brahman, Aparahana, Chihna, Ahlada, Prahlada, Ahvana. All the ha. Ahvana. Okay. You say Hna, Hna, Hma, Hya, Hra, Hla, Va. And you do it. Huh? No. Ha. Ha. Ahvana. It start with ha. So yes. Hna. Yes. Your Hna. Ma. Okay. So it helps in many ways. I have seen it in many ways. Breathlessness, one gets rid of. Lungs problem, one gets rid of. Blood circulation, one gets rid of. I mean, it helps in lot. Yeah. Urasya sounds. And now, these are the sounds which are present in the language throughout. Urasya. 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 Urasya sound. Yes. Then only it becomes, actually the sound ha is the lowest expression among all the sounds. It goes below ka, ha. It goes little below. And still it can be pushed more when we combine na, na, ma, yara, lava, here. No, it goes down. So that's why it has a direct impact on the uras. Uras means the lungs. So that's why it's called the urasya sound.
Slightly unrelated, but ha is a consonant.
Yeah.
Consonants are stop sounds. Ha doesn't
It's not a pure consonant. Ha is not a pure consonant. The pure consonants are only 25. So yara, lava also consonant, but it's not pure consonant. The pure consonants are the stops. So there are many more things to this language. When we use it, we know the logic and magic behind it. The rishis of ancient time used Sanskrit as a tool for discovering the true nature of themselves and all that they saw in and around them. Herein lies the sacredness of Sanskrit. It helps to discover the sacredness of life. It has tremendous potentiality to make us realize the divinity within us. It is in this sense the Sanskrit is Deva Bhasha, or a divine language, or the language of gods. That's the end of.
How much is Hindi and Prakrit related to Sanskrit?
Much. It's around 80%, you can say. 70 to 80%. Prakrit and Pali, they are mispronounced to Sanskrit. Here you say dharma, there it is dhamma. And it all depends upon, for example, certain geographical areas where the things develop in a particular manner that doesn't allow you to speak the language in a particular way, pronounce it properly. For example, you take the people in Odisha and Bengal and untrained, even many trained people also, Sanskrit people also we have seen in Odisha and Bengal. So they can't pronounce the Sanskrit words properly. You ask them to say kavya, they will say kavvo. Vakya is bakko. So that becomes the prakrit. Yes.
So in US, in the top circle, they are saying, and I witnessed, not heard. I was sitting, and I'm sitting there. So they are talking Pali and Prakrit in the Buddhist thing is the oldest language, and very clearly, boldly declaring. And I, having Kirsi done your workshop, feel very disturbed. I can't do much because my knowledge is only one workshop of 5 days.
No, they say that there is a, they put this logic. The Prakrit is natural and Sanskrit is refined. So that is the basis of their talk. That a natural language, perfected, becomes Sanskrit. So Prakrit is older than Sanskrit. Simple logic. Okay. And Sanskrit is older. But Sanskrit was a name which is given much later.
Sanskrit is no language. Sanskrit is the language, undefined version of Sanskrit is Prakrit.
So that's the reason we can spoke about Parini saying Bhasha.
See, the pure becomes distorted or follows the natural ways or the normal ways of the living. Doesn't follow that special ways of using the language.
I still didn't answer. What is the truth?
Truth.
What you can give is Dhamma circles. For example, Dhamma circles. The Buddhists use Prakrit.
Pali. Jain is Prakrit. But the Pali, if you look at, say Buddha, with Buddha, with Mahavira, the Pali language developed. The Prakrit language developed. Okay. So, then Sanskrit was before Buddha or after Buddha?
But what is your proof? You are saying that if Sanskrit is defined Prakrit, then Prakrit came before Sanskrit.
The name Sanskrit came much later. That's what I'm saying. Earlier it was just Bhasha, the language, or Chandas, the highly rhythmic language. The name Sanskrit came much later. The name, it's not there, they said the language.
The language existed, but if it goes by definition.
See, for me the simple logic is, say English. Whatever its origin, if you look at the original people speaking the English, and we speak the English, or many people speak the English in the distorted form.
It's like the Red Indians and the Americans. Still, if I have to tell that no Sanskrit is older than Pali, then I think there's some solid logic, or I accept it.
No.
The
Logic.
Buddha, when did Buddha come into existence?
This logic is
And also record. No, the record. You don't have the record in Pali and Prakrit ancient than Sanskrit.
Does it have logic I use? This Buddha later.
In fact, Tamil is the oldest language, and then comes Sanskrit.
And this, in fact, in general, the Tamil is the oldest language. Tamil.
No.
So in this,
Neither Tamil nor Sanskrit.
in fact, in the world stage,
No, Tamil is as old as Sanskrit, like Greek, Latin, Lithuanian, Chinese. They were all cognate languages, sister languages. They coexisted. They shared their experience. So all these languages have their source. Even Sanskrit has a source of its own. So that source language is lost. So it's again wrong to say Sanskrit is the oldest, or Tamil is the oldest, or Greek is the oldest. They're the older languages, you can say.
So in India, these are the two languages, can we say this? These are the two languages which are very original, Tamil and Sanskrit.
Yeah, it can be. Like I made a statement on the Twitter that when this whole thing happened and a lot of media people wanted my opinion about it, so I wrote a Facebook note on this, that neither Sanskrit nor Tamil, they are the older, so they are all cognate languages. But in the process of their evolution, Sanskrit has preserved its record of experiences in these languages. The literary history of it is preserved well, and lost the spoken form of it. But Tamil continues with its spoken form right from the beginning. So you can say that Tamil is the oldest spoken language in India. The oldest spoken language, which continues to be spoken right from the beginning. At a large scale. But Sanskrit also continues in its spoken form, but very limited. The number of users or the speakers in this language is very less. Tamil has maximum users, and it continues. But the literary record, Tamil has not preserved much. You don't find much record like the Vedas, Upanishads and all these things. Although there are Sangam literature and various other literature, but compared to Sanskrit, you have very, very less. So each language in its evolution preserves something, loses something, adds something. So it's the whole beauty of its own journey. Huh?
How do you see Greek and Latin? They are also supposed to read.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you see Greek and Latin in the light of Sanskrit?
They have preserved maximum number of root sounds, the primitive structure, the original flavor of the languages, the source language. Yeah.
English primarily, most of the Greek.
But is it still there? Because especially Sri Aurobindo was a master in Greek, Latin and French and Sanskrit. He didn't know Bengali actually. So how do you see Greek and Latin's richness, or
It's very rich language from the structural point of view, grammatical point of view, the scientific point of view. Well, no, not spoken. It is being taught in some universities as the classical language, but they are not as widely, like as the case of Sanskrit, not the same way.
Latin was the Sanskrit of older England and the educated. Latin there. Yeah.
and Pali and Prakrit, is it being spoken, practiced?
No. They're all written language.
So the competition reduces to these two people in India itself.
Yeah.
And that's why we're fighting.
They have their own agenda.
There's so much of noise about it in the world. Forget India.
So you bring in more languages and then it will get divided. Hebrew is also like as old, Lithuanian, Chinese. There are many elements of the primitive structure of the language which Chinese has preserved and all other primitive languages have lost. So, in Chinese, or
Mandarin or there are different categories.
what is the language which is maximum in use? The Chinese. So it has preserved, the use of the roots in different parts of speech. Where Sanskrit has lost, other languages have lost. Roots cannot be used. You have to form the words from the root and then use it. Directly you cannot use the root. But in Chinese, the root can be used as different parts of speech, as nouns, as adjectives. Yes. That's one of the primitive nature of the language, which that language has preserved. Greek and Latin have preserved the maximum number of root sounds. But the transparency and the system that one finds in Sanskrit is not there in Greek and Latin.